All right, come on, Betsy. I am, huh? Uh,
Just want to remind everybody to please keep their video thing mute. That would be helpful.
Good evening. It's 6 o'clock, so we'll get started. Good evening. My name is John Urino. I'm the zoning examiner for the city of Tucson. We have 3 cases on the agenda for this evening's hearing. The first is case TPENT 1122-0003, 6th at Campbell Pad. Mr. Juneman.
Good evening, Mr. Urino.
Thank you for joining us. I've reviewed the additional materials you sent in, as well as a draft of the community benefit agreement that I just saw about an hour ago, although that's not directly at issue here. Do you have anything you want to add to your paper, sir?
No, I get the only thing I'd like to add is that I think we're at a point where we've made quite a few changes to the PAD based on that agreement. I think we've reached the agreement, reached terms on the agreement, and you've seen the final draft. You've got a few little things to add to it, but nothing that's substantive. And I just want to thank the Rincon Heights Neighborhood Association for all their work at the end here to kind of get this over the finish line, and we're excited to move on to the next stage.
Great, thank you. Mr. Kinney, are you present and would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Urino. Good evening. I agree with Mr. Juneman. We have made a lot of progress in the last few weeks. Since the hearing last week, the applicant has submitted a revised PAD that includes all of the items that we have agreed to that are appropriate for a PAD. And so the neighborhood is definitely supportive of those changes. We also, as you know, have a nearly final draft of a community benefits agreement that includes additional restrictions that we've agreed to, and that of course we would like. It'll still be another week or two before we probably have the signed agreement. But I'm confident that we'll get there. There's really nothing that I can think of that would stop that. So at the time, I think the neighborhood does not oppose the application in its current state. And if you decide that it is the correct thing to recommend approval of the PAD, we would ask that you condition its approval on these changes being included in the PAD. And to the extent you feel you have the ability to do so, that it's conditioned on that agreement being signed. But again, I'm pretty confident that we'll do that.
Thank you, Mr. Kinney. We had a speaker request from Stacy Plassman. Ms. Plassman, are you present?
I am, but I would just be dittoing what Tim Kinney said.
Okay, Well, thank you for your participation in any event. And would anyone else in the audience like to be heard on this case? Hearing no one, I'm closing the hearing on the 6th at Campbell Pad case, and I'll be issuing my preliminary report within 5 business days. Thanks to all of you for participating and for your hard work in getting this matter concluded. The next case is case TPENT 0223-00013 First and Foothills Pad. Mr. Underwood, are you present?
Hi, good evening, Mr. Urino. Yes, I am.
I think we'll dispense with the staff report since we heard that the last time, but I would like, Mr. Underwood, if you would, I've reviewed everything that's been submitted, but if you would catch us up a little bit on 2 issues really, any changes that have been made to the pad, and then as well, for the benefit of those in the audience who may be interested in this case, if you could give a brief report on the traffic study your client commissioned and the results of that, sir. I've reviewed it, but I think it might be helpful for others in the audience.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Urino. Again, my name is Brian Underwood with the Planning Center. I'm also joined this evening by Garrett Aldrett. And I also have on the call, not here in our office with us, our traffic engineer and our civil engineer from Kimley Horn. So Mr. Dan Iwicki and also Aaron Harris are our civil engineer. So just wanted to start by saying thank you for hanging in there with us for this project, everybody who's on the call, and you, Mr. Urino. We had our initial hearing back in April, so it's been 3 months now since that initial look at this. So we appreciate your consideration here this evening. So I'll keep my presentation pretty brief. I'm glad that you asked about the traffic study because that's pretty much the bulk of what I have to talk about here this evening. I have to give most of the credit to Kimley Horn because they've been the ones that have been busy preparing that traffic study and also a preliminary look at the grading design that we would have. And then we've met with City of Tucson to make sure all of that is meeting requirements and also will work out. So I'll start by discussing the site visibility analysis that was included as part of the traffic study, because there was a concern there, and a lot of the elements of this traffic study relate to the concern for having another driveway there on Foothills Drive and ensuring that that's a safe driveway there. And so the first part of ensuring that what we're proposing here is safe and will work is to look at the site visibility in terms of what is that line of sight on either side of this driveway looking east or west. And so what the images up here in the upper left show is the view. The first image up on the left side is the view looking back to the west towards First Avenue, and the view on the image on the right is the view looking east up Foothills Drive toward up the hill there. And as you can see, there's a clear line of sight, but we would expect that some minor removal and trimming of vegetation would be needed. And that's where you can kind of see that down here in the image and on the lower right-hand side of the screen. There's a triangle here where you can see this tree that just barely encroaches into that triangle. That's this tree up here in the left image. And so a little bit of trimming may be necessary on the edge of that tree there, the northern edge of that tree, to ensure that we have adequate site visibility and that's a completely clear triangle. But otherwise, it's an area that we still would be able to see cars turning for anybody who's pulling out of here. If you look there to the east, same kind of thing, although it's a little bit more vegetation there that may need to be trimmed along the guardrail. Basically, what's hanging over the guardrail there may need to be trimmed back and possibly some removal of the vegetation that's closest to the driveway. So the other items that were looked at as part of the traffic study was an overall look at traffic operations and the level of service of the intersection there of Foothills Drive and First Avenue. And so the good news is that the traffic operations are anticipated to act similarly to the existing and projected traffic conditions. So if you look at what the traffic is today, what it is projected to be in 2024, so next year, and then projected with this project, it all pretty much operates the same. It's a negligible increase from the self-storage because it is such a low traffic generating use. However, I will point out that one of the things that the traffic study underlined for us was that we have adequate level of service for most of the turning movements at that intersection of First and Foothills. However, the westbound approach operates at a poor level of service, a level of service F, and that's in the existing condition. That's in 2024, so next year, and that's with our project. And luckily, as I mentioned, the traffic from our project wouldn't make a noticeable impact on that existing condition. However, that is something that exists, and perhaps it is something that could be looked at through adjustments down south at the traffic signal at First and River. However, one single approach turn movement location operating at a poor level of service is something that is still allowed by the city of Tucson standards. It's only until that intersection falls, every turn movement falls into a poor level of service, that then something has to happen for that. So the other part of what was looked at with this traffic study are two other items. The right turn lane warrant analysis basically looked at, well, to start, it was a traffic count of the existing volumes there on Foothills Drive. And so the folks from Kinley Horn went and collected traffic data on a nice cool day back in May. I think it was May 11th. And what that revealed was that I believe it was 700 or so cars that were traveling via Foothills Drive on that day. 20 of them in the AM peak hour were traveling. So the AM peak hour being 7:45 a.m. to 8:45 a.m. were traveling eastbound, and 25 of them in the PM peak hour from 4:45 to 5:45 were traveling eastbound as well. So that traffic was then combined with what we would expect to go into the self-storage facility itself. And those trips were far under what would be required for a right turn lane to be warranted for this project. And then lastly, the queuing analysis that was done was basically to look at how cars would stack up at that intersection of First Avenue, particularly since we know that it operates at a poor level of service when you're approaching First Avenue going westbound. I believe there was some concern there, particularly from some folks in the neighborhood, about the potential for cars backing up there, and then conflicts with this driveway, right? And so if they're backing up so far that they're blocking people from being able to pull out and avoid someone that's also turning off of First Avenue. So to be able to clear that lane and get to where they need to go. So what the queuing analysis revealed was that we would expect no more than 2 vehicles to back up at that westbound approach in the mornings, and no more than 4 in the PM peak hour. And so, there's a poor level of service. There's some wait times that are associated with turning out at Foothills and First Avenue. But given the volumes that are on the road, it's not expected that you would have a long train of cars backed up there and blocking the ability of vehicles to turn out of this facility. So the other thing that Kimley Horn helped us out with is a look at the preliminary grading of the site, because I know that, another one of the topics that we discussed at the last hearing was the grade differential between Foothills Drive and this site, and ensuring that we could have, or that we can create a driveway that meets the city standards and also is a safe and navigable driveway, right? And so what we have here is a grading exhibit. It's a little hard to see the numbers on there. They're a little small, so I apologize for that. But what it shows is that we've, Kimley Horn has figured out a way to create a gentle transition from Foothills Drive down into the site. I believe this at its steepest, it's about 6% there near the northeast corner of the building. It's about 4.5% as you come off of Foothills Drive. Down on the southern half of the parking lot, it tapers down to about a 3.7% grade, and then obviously at the building we're there at 1% or less, because we're flattening that out. I want to point out on this exhibit also sort of what we discussed with a building official at the city of Tucson regarding the construction plan for the project, because as you can see, we are proposing to preserve quite a bit of the site, the entire southern portion, and then this eastern portion where the wash is. And so there will be a retaining wall that we will come in. That will be a first phase of the design of this project. So the retaining wall will be installed, and this portion right here where you see the parking lot will be leveled out so that can be used for staging for the construction of the building itself here. So those elements will be noted in the development package that's submitted should this project move forward through the pad rezoning. Then the development package will include an exhibit and some notes speaking to the construction phasing and the plan to put that retaining wall in, to do some of the site work to level out that eastern portion of the site for staging. And I should also mention that we discussed with the building official, an alternative plan for parking from construction workers and potentially staging of some of the materials, and that could happen since the property owner of this property owns the self-storage facility to the south, that some of that could occur on the neighboring self-storage facility site. Granted, they will still need to ensure that they are meeting all of their parking requirements, but we would allow for some temporary staging over there, and then a shuttling of some material and workers over to the site to actually construct the project. So beyond that, we've also shared this traffic study with both City of Tucson Department of Transportation and Pima County Department of Transportation as well. And we've heard back from both. The City of Tucson has approved the traffic study, and the Pima County has asked that we provide a little bit more information on the guardrail adjustments that will occur. And with that, I don't have anything else to present, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Underwood. I don't have any right now. We had a request to speak by Darsha Duran. Ms. Duran, are you present? You're muted.
Yeah, I think you should be able to hear her now.
Can you hear me now?
Okay.
Yes, I can. Please start with your name and address for the
My
record.
name is Darsha Doran. I live at 5077 North Campana Drive. I will be looking to an extent down on this project, but this is what I would like to read because I do get nervous. A number of Northridge Villa residents oppose the rezoning of R3 to PAD for several reasons: noise, dirt, traffic congestion on Foothills Drive during the construction, removal of a green area that supports wildlife, including saguaros, which Mr. Underwood neglected to mention, and an area that supports wildlife, and ingress and egress on a narrow hilly road. During Monday's severe monsoonal rainstorm, water rushed down both sides of Foothills Drive and drained directly along the site of the planned storage unit. Future design must take this issue into consideration. Regardless of the traffic study's result, such surveys produce models of historical expected traffic flow, but seldom address actual conditions. There will be an increase in traffic congestion on both First Avenue and Foothills Drive, making it as accident prone as the River and First Avenue intersection is. Currently, it is very difficult to make a left-hand turn from Foothills Drive onto First Avenue because drivers must cross a divided highway to proceed in the southerly direction. Drivers have a choice: wait an extended period of time or venture into the medium and wait until the southerly flow of traffic allows them to proceed. I am aware of at least 2 accidents at this spot within the last few months. Recently, one of the median reflector poles was knocked down by a vehicle. It has yet to be replaced. So people, when they're making that turn, are, often hit the curb, apparently. Sorry. Most drivers traveling north on First Avenue exceed the speed limit as soon as they cross River Road. They also change lanes to pass what they consider slow-moving vehicles. Turning in either direction from Foothills Drive and First Avenue will be much more difficult and dangerous. There are times when northbound cars attempt to make a U-turn when another car is already in the median, blocking the flow of traffic in the outer lane. All of these variables present the potential for serious auto accidents. And as I said, we have had 2 auto accidents there recently, and one woman was in the hospital for an extended period of time after she got hit. All of these variables, as I said, present the potential for serious auto accidents. If this project goes through, we would like to see a stop sign or preferably traffic lights at the intersection of First Avenue and Foothills Drive for both north and southbound traffic. And I have spoken to a number of residents here at Northridge Villas, and they will all agree with this project if there is a traffic light or a stop sign, preferably the traffic light, because people go through stop signs all of the time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would anyone else in the audience like to be heard on this case? Hearing no one, Mr. Underwood, did you have anything further you wanted to say?
Thank you, Mr. Urino, and thank you, Ms. Doran, for your comments. I did want to just address that briefly. Some of the things that were mentioned. We will be doing a full native plant inventory on the site, so any saguaros that are within an area that we would be disturbing, there would be a salvage plan that gets put in place, and new saguaros would be put back on site. If they can't be transplanted from where they are. And we would meet all drainage requirements. I understand we just had our first big monsoon storm there. And so that is something that we're looking closely at, and we wouldn't be looking to increase the flooding upstream or downstream of this property. We would certainly comply with all city requirements there.
Your pictures miss the erosion. I was going to try to submit a picture of the erosion, which is right where you're going to be, your driveway is going to be.
And thank you for bringing that up as well, the erosion aspect of it. That is something that we're also looking at as well, ensuring that however we cut that driveway in there, and place the building on site that we're minimizing that erosion, that we're trying as best as we can to minimize the amount of structured retaining, trying to use the building walls wherever we can to not create additional retaining walls. But we will be looking at the erosion as well. We understand that you know, right now it's tough to make that turn there, that left-hand turn at First Avenue. You know, that is something that we'll continue to explore and discuss with Department of Transportation as we move forward. And in terms of a traffic light, I'm not sure if that's something that would be possible given the proximity to River Road there. But certainly, you know, another item that we would discuss with the Department of Transportation and Mobility.
The elderly people in this area have been asking for either a stop sign or traffic light there for some time, for that very reason. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Underwood. I'm going to close the public hearing on the First and Foothills pad matter, and I'll be issuing my preliminary report within 5 business days. Our last case this evening is case TP-ENT 0223-00012 Broadway Rosemont Apartments. Ms. Gayoso, are you presenting the staff report?
Yes, I am, Mr. Urino.
Thank you. Please go ahead when you're ready.
Mr. Urino, this is a request to rezone about 6 acres of a piece of property near the southwest corner of Broadway and Rosemont. The request is to rezone from R1 and C1 to OCR1 for the construction of multifamily development with over 200 market rate apartments. The proposal as presented by the applicant in his application includes 6 45-foot high buildings, 2 26-foot high buildings, and a 2-story high clubhouse. So the rezoning to OCR1 would allow the proposed density of 37 residences per acre at a maximum height of 45 feet, which is under the maximum density of 87 units per acre and the maximum height of 140 feet that the OCR1 zone allows. You have our staff report and proposed preliminary conditions. The PDSD department is recommending approval of the OCR1 zoning. Something to mention is that there's been a previous case on the property back in 2015. The mayor and council authorized a rezoning of the site. Instead of to OCR1, it was to C1 for a neighborhood shopping center. The applicant came later with a change of conditions and a change of the preliminary development plan in 2018 to change the proposal from the neighborhood shopping center to a micro hospital and commercial and restaurant food service uses. And I think I mentioned that was in 2018. The design compatibility report and the preliminary development plan include a 6-foot high masonry wall along the entire perimeter of the site and a 10-foot wide landscape border along the south and west property lines. Also, there's the setbacks being proposed of 75 feet from the south property line and 50 feet from the west property line, which, you know, we saw they were similar to the setbacks originally proposed in the previous rezoning cases. Also the maintenance building and the 2 carriage units over parking garages are set back almost 50 feet from the west property line. The project is also proposing a 16.5 wide landscape area along Broadway Boulevard and a 19-foot landscape area along Rosemont. The trash compactor and recycling bins are provided by the northeast side of the project. We're adjacent to the C1 zone. In terms of traffic impact onto the neighborhood, the Department of Transportation and Mobility recommended the installation of a sign at the ingress-egress point on Rosemont that states no right turn for vehicles exiting the site. In the application, the proposal was to add a left turn signal traveling south on Rosemont, turning left on Broadway. But the traffic study provided by the applicant and indicated that the proposed left turn signal would really not aid in better traffic flow. We consulted with the Department of Transportation and Mobility, and they concur that not pursuing changes on the signal facing at the Broadway-Rosemont intersection could actually have a negative impact at this intersection and the overall flow of traffic. One more thing, the applicant is proposing a reduction of parking spaces from what's required by the Unified Development Code from 351 to 342, which is about a 6% reduction from what is required by the UDC. We're not anticipating any street improvements as a result of this proposal. And that's all I have. Mr. Urino, I know the applicant is present here to help answer questions or make a presentation about the project.
Thank you, Ms. Gayoso.
Thank
Mr. Warren, would you like to be heard? Would the applicant like to be heard?
Hey, this is Sarah Chitzes with Waypoint Residential. I am the developer for the project and have been working with Tom. I have a feeling he is having complications getting off mute right now.
Okay. We can wait for him, or
No,
if you wanna
I'm
proceed,
here,
go ahead.
Sarah.
There you are.
Great,
Okay, great.
Yeah, no, I was going to introduce you to begin with and have you introduce your team and so on. Thank you.
Well, I'm happy to do that. Apologize for being in my home office where the lighting is not great. So, hi, my name is Sarah Chitzes. I'm with Waypoint Residential. We are a development company that is headquartered out of the Southeast, and I have been hired to help build a presence here out west. And one of our first places will be for our development footprint out west will be in Tucson, assuming that we are able to move forward with this deal. The company has been around since about 2011, and we've got approximately $6.2 billion in total market capitalization to date. Some of those things have been in terms of acquiring assets. Some of that is built on developing ground up assets. And some have traded over that 12-year period at this point. But we're really excited to have the opportunity to potentially develop here in Tucson. And right now, we believe that this project represents roughly a $51 million market capitalization. And on the team, you've got Tom Warren, who's been helping us through the land use process out in Tucson. I've got Darlene Yellowhair, who is also on and representing our traffic engineer, Somas. And then we also have our architect, Costas, and I have a hard time saying his last name correctly, so I will let him introduce himself, but he's with Design Cell that's out of Nevada. And they also have an office in the Phoenix area performing the design for this project.
Thank you. Mr. Warren, anything to
Mr.
add?
Moreno, thank you. Tom Warren, 6701 North St. Andrews Drive, Tucson, Arizona. And I'm the applicant and agent. And I'd like, if I may, have the opportunity to explain the project, the actual location of the property, how it relates to the surrounding area, and also what the site plan entails, and also some of the communication we had with the West Rosemont neighborhood on various things through our process.
Go right ahead.
Thank you. The location is the southwest corner of Broadway and Rosemont. It is 7 acres of vacant land. The north is north of the site is C1.
If others in the audience could mute their devices, it helps with keeping down interference. Go ahead, Mr. Warren. And
Thank
just
you.
for your information, I know the property. I was out there today taking a look, but I'm not suggesting you curtail your remarks in any way. I just want you to know that.
Okay, thank you. Sure. Now I can make it brief. North of the property, there's a C1, 03, OCR2 zoning. And south is R1, single family homes. East is retail, medical, and so on. And west is a bank residential uses. The site is included in the Broadway Craycroft area plan that was approved by Mayor and Council September 26, 1988. Actually, I was at that meeting. Shows my age. The property is also, which I think is equally or more important, is also within Plan Tucson. Property is located in a mixed-use corridor per the plan and Tucson's future growth scenario adopted by Mayor and Council. And I'll just go briefly over certain points that the property complies with the Plan Tucson. The Plan Tucson supports development opportunities where residential, commercial, employment, and recreational uses are located or could be located and integrated, can be accommodated, whereas potential development moderate to higher density development, existing or upgraded public facilities and infrastructure provide required levels of service and can encourage the use of transit, bicycling, and walking. Yeah, this property does comply or provides all of that. Locate housing, employment, retail, and services in proximity to each other to allow access between uses and reduce dependence on the car. High density, greater than 14 units, residential units are encouraged, where primarily vehicle access is provided to an arterial street and is directed away from the interior of low-density residential. Support strategically located mixed-use activity centers and activity nodes in order to increase transit, reduce air pollution, improve delivery of public and private services, and create inviting places to live, work, and play. So those are the main criteria for certain corridors in Tucson. And as we all say, infill development that's encouraged. The property 7 acres, 6.1 acres will be developed for 222 units. The corner, which will be just a drop less than 1 acre, will be retail, but that's not what we're here tonight as far as rezoning is zoned. The development is 222 units. And it is within walking distance and I think this goes back to Plan Tucson, which I just read some of the criteria. To the east of 1,500,000 and north, 1,500,000 square feet of office space, and approximately 340,000 square feet of retail. The 222 units will definitely help with a housing shortage in Tucson, although it's 200, we're much shorter than 222 units, but it will help, and it'll also help the surrounding commercial area as far as the employment base, where people can walk, ride their bicycle or whatever. And it's basically 8 minutes from Tucson Medical Center and about 11 minutes from St. Joseph's Hospital. If you would like, I think I would like to go through the site plan and show the site plan, and then also discuss some of the neighborhood concerns and how we've addressed those.
Please go ahead.
Okay, Costas, could you put up the site plan, please?
While we're waiting for that, what's going to happen with the grade on the property? I noticed quite a difference in elevation as you move from east to west, especially on the back piece of the property.
Yes, the development, well, the grade will be brought down, and the development will be, as you just said, you know, on one side it's higher than the other, obviously, even along the alley. And overall, it'll be 3 to 6 feet lower than it is now. In that portion, except for when we are at Broadway, it will not be 3 to 6 feet lower. So we don't want to exaggerate.
Right. So just for perspective, the development across Broadway from this property, the New World, you're familiar with that New World Plaza development,
Right.
How tall are those buildings, more or less?
Those buildings, I think, are approximately 28 to 35 feet.
Thank you. Are we waiting on your graphic?
Yeah. Sorry.
I'm trying to, but it's telling me that the host has disabled screen sharing.
I'm not the host, so I can't help you with that, but Mr. Beal,
Reno,
can
we
you
just
help him with that?
Yes, I just made her the co-host. I was trying to figure out which person was going to do that, and I guessed wrong. So
Fair enough. That is totally fine with me. Can you see my screen at this point?
I can, thank you.
Okay, I'll try to make it a little bit larger for those on the phone. But Tom, let me know if you need me to zoom in anywhere specific.
Okay. No, this is fine. It shows the ingress and egress off of Broadway on the northwest portion of the property, and then ingress and egress off of Rosemont on the southeast portion. Rosemont is designated as a collector street in the Broadway Craycroft area plan that Mayor and Council adopted a long time ago. There are 6 buildings that are approximately 26 feet in height, and there are 6 buildings that are 40 feet in height to top a parapet. And each building, each of those 6 has 2 pop-outs, I call them, with loft units, which are approximately 43 to 45. On the south building, those pop-out units are located away from the neighborhood to the south. There are 222 units.
I'm sorry, you mean because they're on the front of the building? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, right. And there's only 2 per building, but yes, and they're on the south building. They're located on the north side of that.
So those are the 45 feet?
Yes, 43 to 45 feet.
And so so take building 4, for example, and 5 and 6 for that matter. How tall are they without the pop-ups?
40 feet. And that's what was also designated in both Craycroft area plan actually allowed for 75 feet along Broadway. But that's what's designated or suggested in Plan Tucson and also in the Broadway area plan. There's 329 parking places for the 222 feet. And that comes out to 1.4 per bedroom. I think that's very important. It's not 1.4 per unit, but 1.4 per bedroom. And code in this situation is 1.5. So I want to make that very clear. It's 1/10 less. So basically a 2-bedroom apartment would have 2.8 parking spots.
So I realize we're talking about 6% or a 10% difference, but why not just meet the parking requirement?
Well,
What would be the impact on the proposed development from meeting the parking requirement?
it would not be as economic, to be honest. It'd be Buchanan. It's not, the economics would not work.
Well, so
And
what do you
also-
lose? What do you lose in terms of footprint? Obviously, you lose that number of spaces times whatever the area is, but I mean, what is, can you give me a practical estimate or just give me some,
Sure.
right?
Okay. I think what they would lose was something like 18 units in the overall plan.
Okay, go ahead.
18
Sorry.
to 20, 18 to 22 units. Also, they would have, they're going to be overparked as it is. And they would just have, more blacktop as far as the environment's concerned.
Well, it's all hardscape, right? I mean,
Well,
we're talking basically, I see the landscaping and I appreciate that. I'm just saying, if you're replacing building with blacktop as a practical matter, right? You're not replacing landscaping.
no, definitely replacing building.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure about the heat effect of a building versus just a blacktop surface on land. That's,
I don't know either.
yeah, okay, that's, I've been told, but I'm not going to attest to that fact,
Sure.
Now, in the process, we've had 3 formal neighborhood meetings, and as you know, 1 is required, but we had 3 all noticed, and also we noticed the parking and IPP in each of those. And we just had a development committee meeting yesterday. There was a concern about traffic, how much traffic is created or will increase in traffic will be created and where that traffic will go. Both the City Department of Transportation and SOMAS Engineering, who did a traffic study, have agreed that the level of service, which is B in the area, will stay B. And also the egress on this project, 75% of the egress will come out on Rosemont. And they both have stated that it will be going north. We've agreed with the neighborhood to put a traffic diverter on the property, not on Rosemont, so that it will divert traffic and make it difficult to turn right to go south on Rosemont.
Curbing design, is that the idea?
Yes, right.
So is that in the pad as it's proposed now, or is that a new development from the time the pad document was logged?
That, yes, Mr. Irino, that was a development as of yesterday.
Got it. Thank you.
You bet.
What did you call that
Also-
again? What did you call that again?
I called it, the slang term is pork chop.
Oh, I know what a pork chop is.
All right, traffic diverter.
Got it.
Okay. The developer has agreed to pay for a left turn signal going on Broadway, traveling north on Rosemont. So if you're traveling north on Rosemont and you do not want to turn right, or you don't want to go straight, and you do want to go to the west, a left turn signal could be installed. Of course, that will be approval of the city, but the cost of that is committed by the developer. Another major concern with the neighbors and the west and the Rosemont neighborhood is parking. And we just touched on that. The parking considerations, the 329 parking spots is higher, much higher than the county actually wants. And as far as it requires, excuse me. And as far as the parking study that was done by SOMAS, it is 65 more than their most conservative estimate. And they reviewed like projects in the area. They also noted that bus service on Broadway at this location is every 15 minutes for most of the waking hours, and then every 30 minutes up to midnight. There's also an express stop in the area that you can walk to that can go far east or all the way downtown too. So that's another criteria that's in the Plan Tucson as far as mass transit, bicycle, walking. And another concern was the height of the buildings. They do meet the criteria, definitely, both for Plan Tucson and in the Broadway Craycroft area plan. And the setbacks, as noted in a diagram in Craycroft plan, Broadway Craycroft, is 1.5 times the height. So in this case would be 60 feet. And they have that. That's actually shown in the Broadway Craycroft area plan. The setbacks here where it's the view is most concerned, or just even buildings being close, are 75 feet and 79 feet as far as on building 4.
So, Mr. Warren, I saw a concern in some of the protests and comments in opposition just about the massing, that the massing of the development, if you will, is on the south piece of the property, not flipped around so that it's on the Broadway side. So what I saw were two concerns. One was a concern about a lack of variation for the viewer to the south, looking north, just big block buildings, right? And the other concern was that couldn't it be more intense building wise up closer to Broadway and away from the neighborhood? I'm not stating it as well as perhaps the comments did, but could you address those issues?
Yes, and maybe Costas could also, if he's on, the architect from Cell Architecture. We did look, and one of the neighbors suggested taking the carriage units and so on and then moving those to the back. And they would be right, and I don't believe the city will allow that, but it would be right on the city property line where the alley is. There would be no setback whatsoever. And those are about 25 or 26 feet, and they'd only be 16 feet from the property. And then trying to push the other buildings that you mentioned here forward. Two things happened. The main thing that happened was the PALs for police, for fire, emergency vehicles, basically fire, really were very difficult to come to code. So that is definitely a problem.
Well,
there is.
I may not, I'm not an architect, obviously, but I thought the idea that was being expressed was you've got your taller buildings in back. Why not put your shorter buildings in back? I don't think that would affect the PALs. Just swap out the height.
Well, it did to a point. We'd have to to make it work, the buildings, let's say, that are between building 3 and building 1 and 2. Taking those buildings, which are roughly 26, 25 feet tall, and moving them, the only way it would work is to move them right against the alley, right next to the city property line,
Well, so what I'm
to make the geometry work.
yeah, I get it. I'm not, I guess, how tall is building 1 and 2?
1 and 2 are 40 feet with the pop outs again at 43 to
Got it.
45.
Okay. Go ahead, then you've answered my question and I appreciate it. So just go
Sure.
right ahead.
Yeah, no, thank you. So that basically, so I mentioned the setbacks are 75 feet and 79 and not 60 feet as was designated in the plan, in the area plan. Do you have any other questions, or Costas, do you want to talk about the architecture or the quality of the project? I failed to mention that the project is gated, and I think that's very important because we are in a very, very intense area, if you will, a built up area with the Williams Center and so on, and all the commercial. So the project is gated. And fobs, the neighbors asked about fobs or cards and not a keypad, so that, somebody couldn't give me the keypad combination, I could just come in. And the developers definitely agreed to that. Costas?
Yeah, I could speak a little bit towards massing. This is we did run as I think massing is actually shifted to the north. For example, the buildings are set back from the neighboring property lines from the neighbors, as Tom just mentioned. And that's why it's not against the property. That's why it's further away from the south and west property lines. Also, we made sure that as much as possible, those buildings are not oriented towards the neighbors, with one exception of building 4. But again, this is being set back through the alley and all the parking lots. So it's over 75 feet from the property line plus an alley. So it's really far away from property. So we did those various studies to come up with this plan to really be sensitive to the neighborhood, and those buildings on Broadway Boulevard are the same height as the buildings over there. So I'm kind of probably not sure why would that what would that mean about the massing. Also, the carriage units, there is a smaller 2 buildings in between in the parking area. Those are just a very few of them, just a 4 smaller buildings. That is not really the main focus of the development. This is mostly to provide an option for the residents to have some private garages, an option to have to have the vehicles in the private garages. That is kind of primary use of them. There is only a few units of that sort.
Thank you.
Would you want to talk about the design, Costas?
Sure.
Itself, as far as like ceiling heights, things like that. So
Okay.
everyone can get, a sense of quality, if you will.
Oh, well, so we haven't started yet on the design of actual buildings. We have some preliminary views, preliminary ideas that we have shared with the owner, and the owners has requested us to really we're looking at the quality development here at the mid to higher end apartment complex with so yes, the ceiling heights will be about 9 feet. So it's a taller ceilings, to provide the comfortable, modern living. The exterior materials will primarily be either EIFS and stucco with certain accent materials like a stone or fiber cement cladding, again maintaining a modern look. Flat roof lines, and so that's don't go extra height with that. It's a gated community as mentioned, so it's gonna be feeling a little bit more not exclusive, but but a little more higher end. What else? Well, there will be quite a few community amenities in the clubhouse. We'll have a fitness room for the residents. There will be a workstations for co-working spaces. They can double up as a second office and so forth. There was a game room, for example, for some entertainment of the residents, and so forth. As we mentioned already, private garages, that will be an additional amenity. Things like that.
Trying to create a community living environment. So there will be a pool area for residents to gather. There's guest parking for guests. That's mainly outside of the gated areas, because the gated areas will be for residents only. As Costas mentioned, we have not fully designed the buildings at this point in time. I would envision them having a minimum ceiling height of 8 feet. LVP,
9.
nice.
9 feet.
As long as we're stay within our height requirements, I'd love to
Right.
see 9 or 10, but until all the mechanicals worked out, I'm not promising anything. And then LVP flooring with, stone countertops. What I would hope anyone would expect for a new build in the area, to feel luxurious, maybe not your Four Seasons luxurious, but a very great standard of living.
Thank you. Mr. Warren, anything else from your team?
No, I just thank you for the time, and we did pay attention to Plan Tucson and what the criteria were or are, excuse me, and tried to meet those criteria.
Just a detail question. I saw in some of the materials a concern about windows looking out to the south.
Correct.
Yards, and
that is a design element we've discussed with the neighbors. Again, the detailed architecture plans have not been drafted at this point in time, but one of the items that we offered to compromise into our design is for those so these are 3-story buildings. So there'll be resident units on levels 1, 2, and 3. And for that 3rd story, especially on building 4 and building 5, we'll make sure that there are windows. There's smaller windows that might be higher up on the wall, so they provide natural light, but they're not necessarily at a height where a resident could go and just peer into someone's yard, because I know that there's an expectation of privacy there. So we're willing to design that south-facing 3rd story in a manner to where it's not available to a resident living in those units to
To
look.
be transom windows.
sure.
Correct.
I'm familiar with them. So why not 2nd and 3rd on that?
2nd and 3rd, to our knowledge, we've done a site section and you can't see into their yards from those levels. You're gonna have a wall, there's a wall with the alley, and then there's trees, so there shouldn't be, and there's gonna be, what do we call these, carports? that are also lining this entire south property edge. So you shouldn't have line of sight into the neighbor's yards from those windows.
Okay. You're the design person, I'm not. Okay, Mr. Warren, anything else from your team?
No, thank you very much for the time.
Well, thank you for participating. So we had my practice is to invite folks who have emailed in first, just because I have a list. But then I will turn and open it up to anybody else who wants to talk who did not email in, because there's no requirement that people email in. I have a request to speak from Mr. Douglas, Scott Douglas. Are you present, sir?
Yes, I'm present.
Okay, please just start with your name and address and then tell me what you'd like me to know.
My nighttime address is 7518 North Secret Canyon in Tucson. My daytime address is 5210 West Broadway, the 9-story building, 2 buildings over.
Sure.
So I've been investing in Tucson for 20 plus years. Went to high school and college there. We currently are the largest owner, myself and my company, of Class A office space in Tucson. So notably in the Williams Center, we own 5 buildings next door over there. We have a enormous financial commitment. And in the last 3 or 4 years, we probably invested $20 million, or it will be $20 million in the next 3 or 4 months, in those buildings, upgrading them. It's very important to us that the neighborhood stays the same quality that we're building to. So, and we feel it's a very important element for the city of Tucson to build high quality infill housing like this that's suggested. So my review and our review as a company of both the site plan, the number of units, and the rendering that we've seen, we think is a pleasant addition for the city of Tucson and necessary. The way the city's growing right now, in the Northwest and the Southeast, the only places where they're on the fringes where they're putting multifamily isn't helping our traffic situation at all, and certainly our employers in town with attracting talent to our buildings. So if we can get assurances from both the developer and the city that they're going to build what's shown in that site plan, and also what's the layout and what's in the rendering, we'd be in favor of this kind of development. So we feel very strongly that this is a positive, and relative to all the cities that we've developed in, traffic is not going to be an issue for this use relative to virtually anything else you could put on that site. So retail, entertainment, medical, supermarkets, anything else you put on that site is going to be a dramatically heavier impact on traffic. So I don't think that's a valid concern. So anyway, we're very much in favor of it. And if we can get assurances from both the developer and the city that they're going to build what they say they're going to build, and we'd love to hear more about the interiors, that they will in fact get 9-foot ceilings. They will in fact get all the units that they're after. Because as we start to carve back their development, it's going to decrease the quality. And frankly, over the long term, I think we're all going to want to see something that stands the test of time. So anyway, that's about all I had to say. I wish you well.
Thank you, Mr. Douglas. Appreciate your participation in this matter. The next person is Laura Bailey. Ms. Bailey. Ms. Bailey, are you present? Oh, we'll come back later. Stephanie Fink, Ms. Fink.
Good evening. I'm Stephanie Fink. I live at 4889 East Scarlett Street. I am a member of the Rosemont West Development Committee. I have been doing a lot of research on this project, and I would like to speak to both some of what I see as the positives and some of the issues that may not have already been addressed. I've posted for everyone to look at in the chat a PDF file, which was made from a PowerPoint that provides for you a visual rendering from a human scale, produced by one of our neighbors who is quite talented in this regard. So if you all would like to take a look at that while I'm speaking, you can look at that document. And that will give you a sense of the feel of the development from the perspective of neighbors and passersby, for people whose night address is in Rosemont West and not elsewhere. The pros that I'd like to bring up are that obviously this property does need to be developed, and everyone is on board with strategic development of this lot. Obviously, the city will benefit from having increased revenues from taxation by developing this lot. Having it just be sort of a big piece of dust is not really serving anyone in the community. It will provide profits for an out-of-town developer. It will provide benefits to local development partners, and it will align, in theory, with the need for infill projects that reduce urban sprawl. I'd also like to mention some things that I've picked up on here while the thing being presented is that the need for quality, I think we all would love to see a quality project. This is not a quality project, however, that contributes to our neighborhood. You've heard that it's going to be a gated community. That means it will be cut off from a highly integrated neighborhood with a strong sense of community building. Therefore, it does nothing to promote the kind of community building that you see proposed by Plan Tucson. The other thing that's very interesting here is that these seem to be very pricey units. That would be beautiful if they were filled, but it's quite possible that many of these units will go unrented. One merely need look at the vacancy rates of apartment buildings in 85711. You can also look at the high rates of vacancies in the Benedictine, which I don't mean to insult the plans of the developer here. The Benedictine is stunning, and it has lots of amenities, and it has a lot of vacancies. And we're talking about a very similar price point. The Benedictine also has the benefit of being closer to the university and closer to other truly walkable places. In terms of walkability scores, the developer is suggesting that many people who are residing at this place will be using public transportation. While that may be true, I'd recommend to anyone to walk to go get their groceries or take a bus to go get their groceries who live in this neighborhood. I don't think that anyone who is not forced to do so would do so willingly when it's only 106 now and the sun's going down. Maybe they'll go out now. So walkability is maybe a pipe dream at this point based on our transportation systems. The other thing that's been touted to us is that this will make walking easier to Williams Center because there's so many buildings in there. And Mr. Douglas did reference the fact that they own many properties there, and Williams Center property owners want this to be high end. And we understand that. But Williams Center currently includes multiple completely vacant office buildings. 5210 is empty, 5255 to 5258 is empty, 5431 is empty, and 5151 across the street. As we know, when you go by there all the time, there isn't a lot of in-house people working in 5151. It's often used for an offsite office address. So you can look at an office vacancy rate for 2023 and projected future in a report issued by PCOR of April 2023 that will give you some idea of the extent of vacant office space in this zone. So to suggest that this project will provide housing for people who work in Williams Center is a bit misleading in that there aren't really many places to work in Williams Center, with the exception of the Texas Instruments building and the ADT building. So the question is that why would anyone pay so much rent to live here when there are much better options at the same price point that have high vacancy rates? I would propose that they would not. Rental vacancy rate in 85711 is 8.7%. It's over 19,414 units. Homeowner vacancy rate is 1.2%. Average rental vacancy rates in Tucson are 6.5%. Therefore, rental vacancy rates in our zip code are already over the rate for the entire city. That would suggest that perhaps 85711 is already saturated. The other thing that I think that really what I'd like to hit home here is that this project represents a stunning opportunity for the city of Tucson, not just this neighborhood. We are smack dab in the middle of a corridor that holds a lot of potential. We are in the middle of all the development you see closer to Wilmot and then the Sunshine Mile. We're near Reed Park. People travel this section of Broadway a lot. It could be a showcase. There's nothing forward looking in this design. I've heard no speak of solar. We have all of these building tops covered with nothing right now. Why would we do that? I don't see any speaking of all of these parking spaces covered in a green substance that is permeable. There's no innovative material use here. There is no innovative design use here. Okay, high-end stone countertops, but where is something that is going to be a centerpiece for this city? Where is the vision of our ward? We have a ward that has a plastics recycling program being turned into building materials. Are any of those materials being incorporated in this project? No. Does this developer understand our market? I'm not sure about that. So as much as I see that there's a lot of benefit in having a high-end project at this location, and I fully support it, there is no retail being added aside from the corner that's, we don't know what's going to go there. The OCR1 zoning doesn't seem necessary. We can have commercial, we can have mixed use already on the lot. It's already zoned commercial all along Broadway. Why don't we keep that? Instead of building a bunch of apartment units that may or may not get rented out at a very high price point that do not solve a housing problem in our community, why don't we have affordable, closely built townhouses, something like they have at the Presidio or other mixed use places in town where you have owner occupied housing that can contribute to an actual sense of community, rather than have that sort of a development that benefits all people. We are having development that benefits few people. So in my mind, the current proposition is a no case, when quite frankly, it could be a showcase. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time, Ms. Fink. We appreciate your participation. We have had a request to speak by Jim Marks. Mr. Marks, are you present?
Yes, I am. Thank you. There are some things that I would repeat that Stephanie said, so I'm going to try to refrain myself and limit my comments to what I'm going to call the character of the neighborhood. The Rosemont West Neighborhood Association is and has been unique. And by the way, I live at 4902 East 12th Street. I'm within the 400 feet of this proposed project. And we've been here since 2007. And so we have seen a lot of changes over that time span. I'm going to be referring to Plan Tucson and the Broadway Craycroft area plan. And it's in your memorandum of July 3rd. It's actually on pages 2 and 3 and 4, I think. And it's under the planning consideration. And it's there that I noted on a number of about 3 or 4 of the sentences and then the paragraphs that there was quite a reference to what was called neighborhood character. And for instance, things like protecting the integrity of existing neighborhoods was important in the Plan Tucson, complementing the scale and character of neighborhood activity nodes, encouraging new residential development that preserves and enhances the existing residential character of the area, preserve and enhance the integrity of existing neighborhoods. So, that's admittedly, that's a fairly broad term, but I got to thinking about what makes this neighborhood unique and what its character is. And so these are just really specific things that have been important. And Stephanie did refer to this as community building. And I would say that that's a great catch-all phrase for what RWNA has been trying to do for years. But very specifically, when I first got involved here many years ago, we had a graffiti problem, and RWNA took that on, where as soon as graffiti went up, we had volunteers who went around and took it down. And we discovered over time that less and less of that happened. Today, there's almost none of it. We've got a volunteer in the neighborhood who has a tractor, and he uses the scoop to clean out the low spots when the monsoon rains come along, or he mows the alleys. We had a real alley problem at one time. That is, lots of things got dumped in the alley. And another volunteer came up with the idea of getting roll-offs from the city 4 times a year. And that's been a very successful program. Volunteers went out and trimmed branches along roadways. Hoffman Park, as you know, is the jewel in our neighborhood. Many dog owners, walkers, we've got great horned owls living up in the trees. Many people around Tucson use the Ramada there for parties and for all kinds of events. We hold a spring picnic in the park. We had almost 100 people in this event this year, and it's all about community building. We're doing a pre-Thanksgiving turkey potluck in the park this November. Then we have a holiday event where we have hot chocolate and donations for nonprofit causes in the park. We just did an extreme weather challenge workshop just a week ago, actually, a week and a half ago, attracted almost 30 people to that workshop. And the whole essence of that was really about neighbors looking out for neighbors. In fact, there's all kinds of statistics that show that less people die in these extreme weather events when there is connections with neighbors, people who know each other. There's a networking in our community here to look out for the vulnerable population, people who are under 4 years of age, people who are older than 80, medically compromised people. And so what I'm hinting at here is that this community has a really unique character. And again, in Plan Tucson and in the area, Broadway, Craycroft area plan, there's a lot of reference to respecting that character of existing neighborhoods. Now, Stephanie kind of alluded to it, and I'll say it again, but this project, which is going to be gated, which is going to be walled, is a project that just doesn't fit into this neighborhood. In our neighborhood, we have what we call affordable housing. We have discretionary housing, and affordable housing is a big issue, and this project does not address that in any way. In my experience with gated communities, they are islands. They become fortresses. They become, you gotta put your card in or key in or a key in to get into the place. They become exclusive. That is not what RWNA has been about. There are 725 homes, single-story homes. And we are a multicultural, multi-age, multi-everything community. And we invite and we promote neighbors to get to know each other, care about each other, look out for each other. That's an ideal, admittedly, but it identifies the character of our community. And my concern and our concern is that this project, this proposal, while on the surface it looks, like a pretty nice arrangement, in fact, it just simply it's the wrong place. It does not fit into this community of Rosemont West Neighborhood Association. And like Stephanie, I am not opposed to housing going into this plot of ground. It just seems to me that something better could be envisioned following the Plan Tucson and following the Broadway Crowcroft area plan. But it's especially the sensitivity to the character of this neighborhood that I'm addressing. So thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you, Mr. Marks, for your participation.
Mm-hmm.
Teresa Riel, R-I-E-L.
Thank you very much. Yeah, my name is Teresa Riel. I live at 4926 East Cooper Street. I've lived in the neighborhood since 1996. I'm a member of the Neighborhood Association, the current president. I am not on the committee of the people who are working on the development because they have put dozens and dozens and dozens of hours that I actually currently don't have. But I am a former math teacher. I always check the math and stuff. And so I just do have a quick question for Tom. I was driving when you were speaking. I apologize for not being at my computer, but I heard 329 parking spaces. Did I hear that correct?
Yes, Teresa, correct.
Okay, so I was just doing a little quick math, 222 units. I'm assuming each one of them will have at least one bedroom. So that's 222 bedrooms. And then there are 36 two-bedroom units. So I'm gonna add the 222 bedrooms, one for every unit, and then the 36 extra. And if you multiply that, it's 258 bedrooms is what I counted. If you multiply by 1.4, and maybe my math's wrong, but I got something around 361 parking spaces. And I don't,
351 is what's required.
but I thought you were doing fewer than that at a 1.4 ratio.
Yeah, we're doing 1/10, not 10%. Well, you know what I mean, 1/10.
Yeah.
So 1.4, so like a two-bedroom, the required parking spots for the for the one bedrooms, excuse me, 72 of those require 108. And we're doing 1.4 instead of 1.5 for each category, if you will, Teresa.
So what I just did really simple, so I didn't have to do each section. I did 222 units plus 36 extra bedrooms for the two-bedroom places. So that means that they're going to be 258 bedrooms in the development. I multiplied by your 1.4 and I come out with 361.2 parking spaces. This one, I did the one where I got 361 on my paper and pencil, but I used my calculator this time. So I'm just concerned about the mathematical accuracy of that whole 1.5 parking spaces. It seems as if my math is right, 222 units plus the extra second bedroom in the 36 two-bedroom apartments, 258 units at 1.4 parking space, that would be 361.2 parking spaces. And I'm hearing that we're even doing less than the 351 that was on the original site plan. So 329 isn't anywhere near 1.5 or 1.4 parking spaces. Anyway, just math, we can figure that out at some point.
Yeah, the tables on the actual table that was developed is on the site plan.
Yeah, that was,
it's not like 36 extra. Let's see, there's when you get to the two-bedroom. So if you count the way you did as far as 200, one bedroom for each category, correct? There's 18 extra because of the two-bedroom, not 36. So maybe that's the difference in the math.
Well, then I'm just saying the words I heard you say that there were 329 parking spaces, which is 1.4 spaces per bedroom. Those words don't go with the math on the chart. I'm looking at the same chart too. That's where I got those numbers from. So anyway, that was just my first thing. I'd like, some attention paid to that. The second thing is there was a very, in my opinion, a very inadequate traffic study done by maybe the city or the county. I'm not sure who did it, that said that this new development would not impact transportation at all. And I just think that is Tom Warren, Steve Kozachik, myself, and about 6 other neighborhood members with somebody from Tucson Transportation. We stood out there for about an hour and a half one day, and we saw all sorts of problems. And that is without, 222 cars leaving, once or twice a day. So I would like to ask the zoning commissioner if you could make sure that the transportation study that is done, that it's maybe a little more effective and accurate. I've lived here, like I'm saying, since '96. During the Christmas rush, me and my children, we would walk to Park Mall instead of driving because it would take us less time to walk there than to drive. And that is without the extra number of vehicles trying to turn into this new development. I just, I think that OCR 1, I'm not sure, I haven't heard anybody talk too much about that, but OCR 1 can go to, 140 feet or something insane like that. I think that rezoning to an OCR 1 is excessive unless we could get assurities. And when I say that, I realize that there already are assurities in the Rosemont Broadway, or no, Craycroft Broadway area plan. And, they say that they're going to preserve our mountain views, et cetera. Well, when you put these homes, by the way, I live 150 feet away from the development. And so when you put those apartments, I will not be able to see the Catalinas from where I'm living. So when we are told, well, we'll have assurities that it'll never be built higher than the 43 to 45 feet. I don't have a lot of, that doesn't make me feel safe and secure, because in so many of those plans that are already formulated, they say things about, keeping the density, equal to what is the surrounding community. So anyway, I would just really encourage for everybody, the mayor and council, and for the zoning folks, if you'll pay attention to specifically the math. I think we have 3.3, 3.4, something like that, houses per acre in our neighborhood. And it's going to be 10 times that number of units in this apartment. I have been on our neighborhood association board for many, many years. I've actually walked and talked almost to all of the 700 some odd neighbors and houses we have on numerous occasions, especially during the last election cycle. And, I just think that it would be a shame to put a community north of us that could not be part of our neighborhood association, could not be part of our community because of the fact that they're locked in and that they don't have the ability to, form these neighborhood connections. So anyway, thank you so much. And I just want to mention one more thing that Stephanie had talked about. If you look at that visual rendering of the development on the lot on my side of Cooper, which is 150 feet away, you can see that those 3-story apartment buildings are going to loom greatly over the homes just right across the street from me. So thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Riel.
Thank you.
The next person is Barbara Stoddard. Ms. Stoddard.
I am here. I'm Barbara Stoddard. I live at 5003 East Cooper. I'm an adjacent property owner on the south side of the proposed development. I object to the rezoning proposal. Rezoning from R1 to OCR1 is too great a jump in both density and building height. Neither is compatible with the current neighborhood, which encompasses 2 sides of the development. The southern portion of the vacant lot is zoned R1 for single-family homes with a maximum building height of 25 feet, matching the vast majority of the 725 homes in the neighborhood. RWNA currently has a density of approximately 3.5 residential units per acre in the non-commercial areas. The proposed zoning would allow a density of 37 units per acre, which is a 10-fold increase. Plan Tucson in section LT4 ensures urban design that is sensitive to the surrounding scale and intensities of the existing development. A 10-fold increase in density is not compatible. There are no other 3.5-story apartment buildings in sight. Plan Tucson Section LT 28611 supports design that protects the integrity of the existing neighborhood and enhances the visual quality of the adjacent properties. A 45-foot high-density development does not do that. Section LT 28614 of Plan Tucson ensures urban design that protects established neighborhoods by supporting compatible neighborhood. 3.5 times the height, 10 times the density, not compatible. Broadway Craycroft area plan in the residential sub-goal encourages new residential development that preserves and enhances the existing residential character of the area. Yes, this development is residential, but it in no way enhances the current neighborhood character. Under design considerations of the Broadway Craycroft area plan under land use compatibility, high density residential, which they consider greater than 14 units per acre, development is compatible with surrounding scale, density, and character if it is supported along arterial streets. This is not compatible in scale or density or character. OCR1 and this development is totally inappropriate for that corner. There are no objections to the northern parts of the current vacant parcel on Broadway being developed as C1, which it is currently zoned as, allowing a maximum building height of 30 feet. Mixed use and or lower density development would be welcomed in the entire lot. I agree there are a lot of presentations to come and some have already been done. I agree with every other presented objection, either written or presented here tonight, to this development for loss of mountain views, increased traffic and noise, lack of sustainable options, heat island effect, loss of privacy to nearby residents, insufficient parking, wasteful use of water by swimming pool, lack of affordable housing, lack of accountability with no 24-hour on-site management, no stepped building heights, which were proposed in previous rezonings, but are considered too expensive by this one, and the presentation of a gated community as becoming quote unquote part of our neighborhood. Should the city decide to approve this way out of proportion rezoning, we need zoning conditions. They are a must. This is especially important and relevant with Waypoint's build and sell policy per their real estate investment website. I would ask that a height restriction be imposed on the property, holding heights of any future buildings to 45 feet or less. I would also ask that the zoning examiner issue a continuance so that there is more time to negotiate with the developer to mitigate the effects of such a high density development on the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stoddard. The next person is Sarah Vasquez. Ms. Vasquez?
Yes, I'm here. I just wanted to turn on my camera really quick.
Sure, take your time.
I'm Sarah Vasquez. I live at my daytime and nighttime address is 4933 East Cooper, directly on the southwest corner of the proposed megalith. I wanted to talk a little bit more in detail about some of the other ways in which this proposed corporate project is not in compliance with Plan Tucson or with the Broadway Craycroft area plan. I feel like there's been a little bit of razzle dazzle and, for lack of a better term, cherry picking specific phrases that might justify creation of such a huge project. But, you know, I'm in the healthcare field. I'm not a developer. I'm not an architect. I'm not a city planner, but I did read through it quite in detail, and I feel like it doesn't comply. And so, you know, you can read it, Mr. Iarino. I think I've sent you a lot of my main points in writing, but I just wanted to walk through a few of them here and hear some feedback perhaps about them. But before I talk about the specific points in the plans, I just wanted to take a minute to talk about who wrote those plans, because there's been allusions in past conversations about how the plan is kind of like antiquated and it was written like 1 million years ago when dinosaurs roamed the earth. You know, and the fact of the matter is, it was like 30-something years ago when I was already a fully formed adult. Everybody I see on this call, except maybe Jennifer, you look very young, and maybe Stephanie too, but pretty much everybody else on this call, when this plan was passed by by the mayor and council, we were all fully functioning adults capable of looking into the future, capable of coming up with a vision of what we wanted our city and our community to look like. And so this wasn't some random, NIMBYs and random, scared people who just never wanted their neighborhoods to change. These were people who were committed to living and growing old and raising their families in Tucson. So I just wanted to throw that out there. And I will name some names on the Citizen Planning Advisory Committee of the Broadway Craycraft Area Plan. There was Larry Lucero, who is a member of Chicanos por la Causa, Sonia Trejo, who is a teacher at TUSD, Jean Berry, who was from the Black Chamber of Commerce and also worked with Vantage West. Also developers, David Dibvig, I can't say his last name, who's a commercial property developer and owner. So it was a really mixed, group of Tucsonans who were involved in putting together and planning the Broadway Craycraft Area Plan. The steering committee also included members of the faith community. There was apparently a pastor, a father, and a sister. And I tried, Googling them, but I couldn't find anything. So, and then when it comes to the Plan Tucson, the entire city, and this was only passed 10 years ago. So again, it's not ancient history. I've been living here since then. I think I went to maybe one public meeting, so I didn't do my part. But the entire city was involved in developing Plan Tucson. There were 64 public meetings over a span of 2 years. There was this was a voter ratified plan. So literally the entire city of Tucson approved the Plan Tucson. And the mayor and council they voted on a resolution to adopt the plan, but it was the voters of Tucson who adopted this plan. So I'm bringing this up because, there's kind of been this illusion, not just, trying to pitch this project, but also it's, there's a lot of political pressure right now to go against plans and to go against, community visions because there's a sense of urgency to build. And I totally understand that. There's definitely an affordable housing crisis in Tucson. And as my neighbors have said, this is not the answer to the affordable housing crisis. And the last thing I'll say about, the housing shortage is I've been living here since 2007. That lot has been owned by the same family and passed down through generations from, parent to child, longer than that. And they've had an opportunity to put housing on it for as long as they've owned it, at least in the time that I've been here. And this $6 billion corporation has been building, to their credit, but they haven't been building here. And there's plenty of other empty lots up and down Broadway and on, 22nd and, empty lots all over the city that landholders and corporations have intentionally not built upon. And I don't think that neighbors like us who have worked together to put down our roots, form relationships, and do all the things that Jim talked about should be on the hook for other people's failure to act. And we shouldn't go against, the voice of the people, so to speak. I'm kind of losing my train of thought. Having said all that, I did send you a lot of my points. I'm not going to go through every single one again, but I did want to just touch on a few things. Plan Tucson, we've all talked about Plan Tucson. One main thing that Teresa already mentioned is that stable neighborhoods strengthen the city by maintaining property values and creating sense of community. On page 176 of the current Plan Tucson, Rosemont West is defined as an existing neighborhood and says the goal for areas like existing neighborhoods is to maintain the character of the neighborhood while accommodating some new service development and amenities that further contribute to neighborhood stability. This, as Jim and others have said, this corporate housing project does the opposite. It walls us off from the people behind there. It walls them off from us. It keeps us apart from over 220 people who are living within our neighborhood while it's increasing noise, heat, traffic. It's working in opposition to the goals stated in Plan Tucson. Plan Tucson also says that the built environment should use designs that match the scale and intensity, as Barbara mentioned already. I'm going to go ahead. Plan Tucson designates the north edge of the lot specifically as a business use or mixed use corridor, and specific criteria are built into the definition of what development should look like on that strip. I don't know if the corporation's agent in Tucson used the correct guideline for justifying this development adheres to the plan, because the one that I found says that medium density units, which is between 6 and 14 units per, medium density development between 6 and 14 units per acre is permitted when primary vehicular access is provided to an arterial or collector street. Okay. There's a guideline that comes right after that that defines higher density if primary vehicular access is to an arterial street only. It's two separate points. So we were told just yesterday, you know, we requested another meeting at the 0 hour with the developer's agent, and I asked again, and I was told that 75% of the vehicles exiting that project are going to be exiting onto a collector street, which is Rosemont. And so if that's the case, then the guideline LT 28.6.1 applies and limits residential development along that mixed use corridor street, Broadway, to 6 to 14 units per acre. So I just wanted to underline that. Plan Tucson does allow residential scale, commercial or office use along collector streets if no significant traffic will be violated. This corporate developer is talking about putting 45-foot buildings, densely packed buildings facing this collector street, which, you know, it doesn't mention, the guideline doesn't mention residential. We've all said we want residential. I want residential. That's one of the reasons I bought here, because that lot was zoned residential, and I'm from a really big city. In fact, this is the first house I've ever lived in. I've always lived in duplexes and triplexes and fourplexes. And I was feeling nervous not having enough people around me, but not that many people. I'm kind of used to it now. And I want to be able to knock on people's doors and see their faces. Anyway, I digress. So the guideline LT 28.6.5 tells us that the guideline supports residentially scaled neighborhood commercial and office unit uses along collector streets if the building is residentially scaled. So this is just, you know, we're talking about using Plan Tucson to justify big developments. And I don't think that's what Plan Tucson says. I wanted to talk about whether this entire lot is on a very busy street or not, because that is mentioned in Plan Tucson as well as the Broadway Craycroft area plan, which I'll come to shortly, and I'll try to keep it short. I'm a talker. But I don't know how to do screen share, but if you were to, you probably have looked at this plan. You were out there today, Mr. Iarino, and so you know that the southern end and the western side of the lot go right into the residential neighborhood. This isn't a big dense, it's not a big dense street. 12th Street is basically a cul-de-sac with homes on both sides. My house is at the kitty corner. It's right there. You know, it's inside the neighborhood. And so this, you know, you could put transitional housing there, but to put a big, you know, dense 37 unit per acre building is not consistent with what the plan calls for. Residential development has to have densities that complement the size and intensity while providing transitions to lower density residential units. For example, medium and low density infill can complement the scale and character of the neighborhood. And that's guideline LT 28.2.15. I was a little surprised that the Planning and Development Department found this compatible, because the more I read, I wanted to get it right. You know, I don't want to be coming across like an anti-housing person. So I wanted to get it right. I wanted to understand what I was saying and what I was supporting and not supporting. And so I think it's pretty clear that this size development is not supported by the plan that pretty much everybody in Tucson agreed was, you know, was the right thing to do. So Plan Tucson, I'm going to leave it now. There's more, but it defers to Broadway Craycroft area plan for specifics. I wanted to just give some definitions directly from the Broadway Craycroft area plan, because there's been a little razzle dazzle about height of buildings versus density of buildings. And they're two separate things. And I understand, we all understand what that is, but I just wanted to say that the rise of a building talks about how tall it is, and the density of a building talks about how many people per acre can live there. And I just wanted to, you know, we all know that, and we can all read that. I just wanted to point that out, because sometimes, you know, answers to questions about density will start talking about height, and that's two different things, and they're both very relevant. So the Broadway Craycroft area plan, I'm going to call it BCAP because my mouth is getting really dry. It says only low and medium density residential use is permitted along the west side of Rosemont between Speedway and Broadway. So this mega corporation's local agent is saying that since the lot is south of Broadway, that doesn't apply. But Rosemont is a collector street and the whole entire lot, you know, you can't have it both ways. It's either on Broadway or it's not on Broadway. So it's either on a high density street or it's not on a high density street. I don't know. So I think it is on Broadway. And but the further point is that Rosemont is still defined as a collector street and it's surrounded by low density residential. So to me, the low and medium density residential use would be much more appropriate than a high density parcel. I'm going to speed through. BCAP allows medium and high density along arteries. Again, I'm contending that the south and southwest portions of the parcel are within the interior of the neighborhood. And, you know, we've talked a little bit about how to mitigate, you know, privacy concerns, et cetera, et cetera. I think that would be unnecessary if we would just tone it down. And just to digress for a second, I find it hard to believe that, I don't remember what the exact term was, that it wasn't affordable or that they would be losing money. It wasn't financially feasible if it were smaller or if, you know, they didn't have 12 fancy lofts on top or whatever. I find it hard to believe a $6 billion corporation can't, you know, stand to lose 12 rental units. Anyway, yeah, I think just in the interest of time, I'm going to mention one more thing and then I'm going to shut up. But BCAP does have general design and buffering policies that even as it's written, don't adhere to the, For example, the plan specifically calls for preserving Catalina views. That is in a section talking about general design and buffering. It's policy number 3. It describes specific design and architectural elements. It's supposed to preserve an airiness and, you know, open air. It's supposed to shield and direct outdoor lighting away from residential areas. You know, with only a 6-foot wall and all those parking spaces, you know, that's not going to shield us in any way, shape, or form. There's also a transportation sub goal. Again, others are probably going to speak to this more, but we don't feel that and then Barb did mention, or maybe it was Teresa, we don't feel that the traffic study addressed the true impact of traffic of this. It doesn't, the traffic study only looks at number of cars going through the Broadway Rosemont intersection. And we're very concerned because there's 3 schools in our neighborhood. There's Rincon University High School, and many of our neighbors walk that way a couple times a day. And they walk through the corner of Niven and Broadway, which is going to be heavily impacted. One of my other neighbors is going to talk about more specifics of the traffic. And it doesn't talk about the people who attend the clinic in the New World Center across the street. That's a clinic that specializes in mental health care. And many people get off the bus and have to cross that intersection. People get off, people go to the senior citizen clinic. I forget what it's called, whatever it's called. There's a new senior citizen clinic on the opposite kitty corner from that. So but the point is there's a lot of foot traffic of people who might not be, you know, spry or fast or attentive for whatever reason. And so we don't feel that the traffic has been adequately studied. And yet that is also called for in BCAP. All right. So yeah, that concludes my comments. If I didn't already say it, and if it's not evident by now, I am opposed to this kind of rezoning. I'm not opposed to any rezoning. I'm not opposed to residential. I just feel like this is really overkill, and it's also not compliant with the plan. And I will be quiet. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your participation. So that takes care of everyone who emailed in. Would anyone else in the audience like to be heard on this case?
Yeah, I would, if it's possible.
Of course it is. Please start with your name and address.
Stephen Buckley. I live at 5035 East Cooper. I'm one of the people that our property backs right up against yours on the south end. I was wondering if I could share a screen. Would that be possible?
So Mr. Beal or Ms. Gayoso, can you assist with empowering screen sharing for Mr. Buckley?
Try.
Thank you.
Looks like it's working.
Well, that's me, but I mean, I have a photo that I'd like to share with the group.
I see Nikon webcam utility.
Okay, host disabled participant screen
Yes.
sharing is what I get when I try and.
Right, is
screen
your,
share.
are you calling in on a certain number or?
No, I'm on the website.
Well, you should be on here. Buckley. Oh, there you are. Okay,
It
try
still
now.
says host disabled participant screen share.
Try again. I think you're empowered now.
All right. Okay, let's see. Um, 1 moment. No, it's not letting me.
Can you possibly share a file in the chat space? You can post a file into the chat and we can open it up for ourselves. Is that something that
Okay,
might try
I
it?
can try that. Sorry, it's not letting me.
Well, so, a picture's worth 1,000 words, but why don't you describe to me, Mr. Buckley, what you wanted to share?
Well, what I've taken is a picture from over on Craycroft and 16th Street of the Williams Center apartments that are over there that are 3 stories. I walked up to their fence off 16th Street. There's a buffer from the street to their fence. They had just a metal fence and it is 6 feet tall. There is some shrubbery that's there, and then they have a parking garage, a covered parking space. And then there is a driveway and another set of parking in front of their 3-story apartments. And from the fence to the building is 75 feet. And if you stand at that fence, the only visible thing that you see is stucco. You see a little bit of sky above it, but you don't see anything of Tucson whatsoever other than stucco. And that would be my view. The only difference would be the added space between your fence And my fence would be the alleyway that's there. So another 10 or 12 feet easement. And that is not going to improve anything. The picture clearly shows that if you stand at that fence and look at 79 feet away, all that you see is 3 stories of building. And the second story does appear over the parking structure. So the parking structure is probably 9 feet tall. And windows from the apartment are clearly visible above that. And so therefore, second and third story apartments from building 4 would be able to look right into my house and my backyard. So needless to say, with high density and 44 feet tall, I'm got to oppose this. There
Thank you,
just
Mr.
isn't
Buckler.
any way that I could do it.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Would anyone else in the audience like to be heard?
Yes,
Yes, my
Mr.
name's Andrew Melendez. Can you hear me?
So I saw Kathy's name first. Kathy, I didn't catch your last name. Would you like to go ahead, and then we'll take the next person after you?
Of course, my name is Kathy Kalthoff. I live at 4933 East 12th Street. My property is adjacent to the west of this development.
All of us in the neighborhood.
And I just want to tag.
Just excuse me, sir. Sir, Ms. Kalthoff is talking now. We'll get to you right after she's done. Go continue, Ms. Kalthoff.
Okay, I just want to add my 2 cents in. Innately, I'm opposed to this development. And whereas my neighbors on Cooper have a little bit of a buffer because of the easement, I will not have that buffer. And when I purchased this home 27 years ago at a much younger age, I did my due diligence and I saw the vacant lot. I did my research and I said, oh, okay, it's zoned residential. And I purchased it with, you know, the forethought and assumption that it would or should be developed residentially. I agree with Teresa, Sarah, Jim Marks, and all my neighbors that putting a high density apartment complex will change the fundamental demographics of the neighborhood. Plus, I will lose with the 2 buildings that they're planning off Broadway, etc. I'll basically lose any kind of privacy in my backyard, the same way the people on Cooper will be. So that's all I've got, but thank you for your time.
Thank you for your participation. Appreciate it very much. We have a hand raised with the phone number ending in 762. Would you like to go next and start with your name and address, please?
Hello, this is Andrew Melendez.
Okay,
Hello?
go ahead, sir.
Yes, I live at 5067 East Cooper Street, the second house from the end of Rosemont there. My property will abut right against the new development. I don't really have much to add because so many people spoke so eloquently about the issues. But my house will sit looking at a 4-story apartment building. I hear the architect say, well, we haven't designed the windows yet, so we're not quite sure. Well, I guarantee you, once the approval for the zoning happens, what they do with those windows and who looks in our backyard won't matter at that point. I bought that house in 1990, in the 90s, with my first partner who passed away of leukemia. And that house, the alley was designated, or that property behind there was residential. I've been there since they tried to put Safeway twice in there, a Walmart, the shopping strip. All I can say is I heard the word profit often. If we reduce the parking, we won't make profit. If we move the larger portions, the taller portions up front by Broadway and the smaller ones out back, then it creates a smaller platform. I hate to say this, but bottom line is the family bought that property knowing what it was zoned at. We in the neighborhood know what that was zoned at. So why should we in the neighborhood have to suffer because a family wants to make money? I don't want to reiterate everything that's already been said, but I bought that house when it was a repo. Half the tile was gone, the toilets were gone, and I have built that house up. I've had to move out to take care of my parents for the last 10 years, but I had renters who have taken care of it, who were involved with the neighborhood, always informed me what was going on. I plan to move back in there. That's where I want to retire. But I ask you, as the people who are the city development, if you owned a house along Cooper Street, abutted to the north side of that development, and all of a sudden you had a 4-story building in front of you, how would you feel? I went to a ribbon cutting. I've been in the media for 37 years. I went to a ribbon cutting by the mayor and one of the city council members on Broadway. And they were talking about, oh, they wanted 4 lanes on this Broadway, but we kept it down to 3 because Tucson is a certain kind of environment. We want to control growth. We want to control expansion beyond what it should be. Well, I'm sorry again that this family wants to make money, but why should we in the neighborhood have to pay that price for that family to make money? You can look in the statistics lately. Apartments are now becoming partially vacant. There's more apartments being built than the occupants to fill them. And all I want to say is, in all the years when the Safeway wanted to go in, the Walmart wanted to go in, the strip mall, I allowed the neighborhood to have my backing, whatever it wants. This is the first time I've ever called into anything, and I'm 61 years old. I beg you not to allow this development to go in as it is. The family bought that lot knowing what it was zoned for. Allow it to be built to that zone. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for participating. Would anyone else like to be heard?
This is
Hello?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Which one of us were?
Well, I can see you. I don't know who else wants to speak.
Oh, I
but
thought I
we'll
heard
take
another voice. I'm sorry.
Jennifer first. Jennifer, would you go first? Start your name and address, please.
Yes, Jennifer Wesley, 4850 East 13th Street.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm not an expert in all the matters that everyone else has discussed, and very, very appreciative for all the research that's been done by the members of our neighborhood who spoke during this hearing. It was just amazing, and I really appreciate that so much. I'm not well versed in those technical details at all, but I'm speaking more on a personal level. I understand the need for housing in Tucson, for affordable housing particularly. I've worked with children and families and social services for 30 years. I definitely understand the importance of that, and I value that. However, as many have discussed, this is luxury housing. This is a totally different situation, very high rents, et cetera, high density. It goes against the Broadway Craycroft edition that was written in, I believe they said 1988. It goes against a lot of the plan for Tucson to have more housing. In addition, like others have said as well, those of us who purchased homes in this neighborhood did it with the assumption that that was zoned the way it was to protect the integrity of our neighborhood, the safety, the character, the community, et cetera. Not with tall buildings in the way of views, not damaging our property values, not putting our children at risk trying to walk to school. I have my daughter graduated from University High last year. My son goes to Rincon. He walks to and from school every day, right there by the area that would be affected the most by the additional traffic of, I think they said 300 some odd additional parking spaces. That's quite a lot and very few areas for those cars to get out quickly and travel quickly during high volume times like morning and afternoons. And you know, one of my concerns is that people will be speeding through our neighborhoods, et cetera, that there will be parking overflow onto our neighborhoods as well due to some of the math issues that came up where there may not actually be enough parking units inside the gated area. And also just in general, speaking in terms of property values, we have, this is not a high-end neighborhood. It's sort of mixed but generally, you know, a lot of families, that sort of thing. You know, I am a single income household, as are several of my friends in the neighborhood who also have children. I can't speak for them, but I can say for myself, this is all I have. I don't make much money in the field I work in, but it's a passion of mine to help vulnerable individuals in Tucson, and always has been. So I make that sacrifice. But as such, you know, I'm not, my income is probably not even 0.1% of the income of the developers that are going to be further enriched by this if the zoning is approved and if their development takes place. And some of those individuals, you know, some of that money isn't coming back into our community because some of them are out of state, et cetera. And then there's also concern that they might resell, like they said, and do a different project than what we're being told at this time. But even what we're being told now, would damage our property value significantly, put our children at risk, walking in the neighborhood, that sort of thing. And I just don't think it's right, particularly for the people who live very close to that proposed development. And I can't imagine, I mean, if to have, you know, the one thing you have, your one investment or your one financial security be greatly diminished by something like that when you have no control over it, when there were already steps taken in advance to prevent something like that, such as what was created in 1988, the Broadway Craycroft edition and some of the other things that they discussed. It just isn't fair, like just from a basic perspective, I feel it's very unfair. And I don't feel it benefits hardworking families and hardworking people in Tucson who are just trying to make it with the situation the way it is financially for so many of us. And that is one of my main concerns, as well as safety. So I'm definitely opposed to rezoning that lot. I also feel that the way it's zoned could, you know, if it was followed the way it's zoned, that would be perfectly fine. There's plenty, our neighborhood was in favor even of rezoning several years ago when they were going to put a grocery store there and that sort of thing. So we don't fight every development or anything like that, not at all. We just want developments that won't be harmful to our neighborhood and to our community here. You know, these are our homes, our investments, our children, everything. It's extremely important.
Thank you, Ms. Wesley. Mr. Warren, I'll give you an opportunity at the end, but I want to make sure everyone who's had a chance who wants to speak has had a chance to do so.
Okay.
Sure.
Hello.
Yes, Ms. Stoddard?
So this is Laura Bailey. I had a little tech problem, so I had to go to a neighbor's house. I live at 5027 East Cooper Street. I've been on the board of Rosemont West Neighborhood Association since 2014. And I've lived in my house I bought in 1978. One of the very first, and I have the zoning conditions, so I don't know if we want to go over them one by one or just in general, but I do want to make one or two little points. The setback, when he has repeatedly talked about 75-foot setback for buildings 3 and 4, but building 6 is a 63 foot and 11-inch setback according to the site plan. That building 6, the people that live on the end of the street, the corner house, not only are they going to have this huge building looming 63 feet from their backyard, but they also are going to have the gate right behind their yard. And the gate, the gates slam, it's a lot of noise. And I think that I feel bad for that house. I don't feel that house is being protected or in any way dealt with. I think they're kind of getting a raw end of the deal. A couple things that I want to talk about with the parking issue. When they talk about, spaces per bedroom, and if it's going to be 1.4, 1.5 or whatever like that, I feel like they're not really thinking about guest parking. I don't think they're taking into consideration spouses, significant others, partners, boyfriends, girlfriends, the kind of people that would very regularly be there. Maybe not every night, spouses would be there every night, but so one bedroom, could easily have 2 cars. And so I think that's very significant. And it adds to, I feel like these are the people that are going to end up using the guest parking spaces. And so what happens when there's game night, when there's football night or whatever, and then people have guests over. So I don't really feel like there's enough guest parking. And so, what's going to happen is, there's going to be some signage to keep it off Rosemont or whatever, and maybe the signage will work and maybe it won't. But I do feel like Cooper becomes, particularly vulnerable. A couple of points I want to make about the parking study that SOMAS did for them. They used 2 supposedly comparable apartments in the area. One of them, their slogan, it's on their sign, it's on their website. It says affordable to any budget, and their studios are $680 versus $1,400 for Waypoint. And this would be irrelevant except for the fact that I think that Sienna Ridge very possibly has low rate of car ownership. So to choose that complex as a comparable to show, how many parking spaces they had empty or whatever, and they did their study on a Sunday night between 10 and 11 p.m., which we don't really think that's relevant, because our issue, the overflow parking that we are worried about, is more going to be the guest parking, the party night. With 258 bedrooms, there's going to be I don't know how, I don't know what the mathematical formula is to figure out how many boyfriends and girlfriends and whatnot, but these people are going to need, I really feel like we need all spaces. Another thing is that the comparable apartments were not located near neighborhoods, so there was no way to find out if there was overflow parking into the neighborhood. And I feel that it would be very relevant to literally talk to neighbors. If there was an apartment complex and it was similar to Waypoint and it was butted up to a neighborhood, if you could go to that first transitional street and knock on doors and say, have you guys had problems? I think that would be very, I think that would be a relevant and a good fact to have, and that's not been done here. We did ask him to make some kind of parking arrangement with Barnes and Noble, and we didn't hear back. We didn't get an answer from him, but there's another option for a parking lot arrangement, and that would be with that what I'm going to call Tom's Corner, but it's that the C1 section, the corner, that northeast corner that's going to remain, that I guess Tom's going to maybe put restaurants or something. But that's C1. There's going to be a parking lot there, and it would seem that there could be an arrangement made, and B, if there's not really going to be any overflow parking, as they assure us that there won't be, well, if that's the case, then why wouldn't he agree to some kind of a parking lot arrangement? So we want to be able to pursue that. And there's some other points that I want to make. One of them I want to describe on Rosemont, their gated entrance exit on Rosemont. The gate is 26, according to the site plan, gate is 26 feet in from, it's hard to tell if that's the sidewalk or the property line, but it's 26 feet in from something right around there. So my car, I measured it, and it's 15 feet long. So if I want to pull into there, I'm going to probably stop 3 feet or something in front of the gate. So there's 18 feet, and whatever car, if somebody's coming in, it's 5 o'clock or 5:30, and it's, people are coming home from work. So there's a car behind me. So, they've got to be at least 3 feet in between, between them and me. And so now you're up to 21 feet, and they're on the sidewalk. They're blocking the sidewalk. Or maybe they're right out practically into Rosemont. And if there's a third car, they are in Rosemont blocking the traffic. Well, the southbound Rosemont goes south, it's a single lane. So if there is any cars sticking out, then they're holding cars up behind them. And we feel that that's going to be an issue. And it's not really being taken into consideration. There's, this business of the 75% of their residents using Rosemont Collector Street. And, Sarah's already gone through some of the BCAP stuff and pointed out what some of these issues are. So I don't really need to go through all that. What's that? Oh, yeah. Yeah. So one other little point on the parking is that Waypoint's going to be charging the residents $250 for parking fee. And I feel that is, it's a great moneymaker for them, but for Waypoint. But I also feel that that's an incentive, or it's, it's a disincentive for, say, the spouses and some of these other people that are maybe not even on the lease. And if they have to pay $250, they're going to look for other parking. So, I also feel like that's an issue. Separately from all of that, and then, so we have the zoning conditions, and one thing that we're going to really need to discuss is the wall height. And we need, Tom came back with 6 foot. Well, first of all, in the previous plans, it was more open. It was going to be, we talked about 8 foot or something like that. The plans never went far enough for the wall to actually get built. But I'm just saying that in the past, there seemed to be an openness to something taller. 6 feet isn't even remotely going to block noise, and that's our issue. That's what we're really worried about. Parking right behind our homes. Apartment parking lots are notoriously, even when there's always going to be car door slamming. There's possibly also going to be talking and arguing and all the things that go on in a parking lot, because people aren't using their indoor voice, they're using their outdoor voice. They have no awareness that so close to somebody's bedroom window. When you talk about 75-foot setback, all of our homes are 62 feet wide, or not our homes, our properties are 62 feet wide. I think that's probably fairly average for in town. So when you're talking about this, the building 6, that's 63 feet. I mean, that's like them standing on one side of their yard, and right inside their neighbor's property is looming this, 45-foot building. And in between that is a couple rows of cars parking. So, all right, so back to the wall, we really feel that we need taller than 6 feet. We really need to have, I mean, if it was up to me, which of course I wouldn't get it, but I'd ask for a double insulated 10-foot wall. I mean, I don't even think a 10-foot wall is really gonna block, all the sound for us, but I certainly, we can't go higher than that, but we need an opportunity then to, work with Tom and try and come up with something with the wall. So we are asking for a continuance, at least to be able to work through a couple of these issues. And there's maybe a couple of others that are gonna come up, that are on the zoning conditions list, which, now I don't really know. Do we have time do we just go through? I mean, you have all of this. This has all been sent into you. So I don't know if you want us to go through these items one by one, or you know, how we would do it. So I'll let you answer that.
If you're asking me if I want you to tell me more about the zoning conditions that you have concerns about, please do.
Okay. Okay, well, going through them, and number one, you know, the parking spaces, which we really have talked about that quite a bit, I guess, between all of us, so we don't even talk about that anymore. We remain vulnerable to cut through traffic. You know, the thing, and this isn't in the zoning condition, I'm just talking, the thing with high density, and this has been mentioned by other people, but when I feel like you can't just go from high density to low density. I feel like there needs to be some kind of transition. And I think that, you know, if you let nature take its course, there's going to be a transition. And unfortunately, in this case, it's going to be Cooper Street. There will be people there in that complex where they don't want to wait for these left turns and the clog, you know, all these people with cars stacked, and, you know, they're in a hurry, they want to get going. So you got these convoluted ways in and out of it. If you want to go west, you have to make a crazy, you have to cut all the way across Broadway into the left lane. You don't have very much time. You got to get to that left turn lane at the intersection. It's somewhat dangerous to do that. If you can't do that, well, you can choose to use the Rosemont exit, but that also can get clogged. And so what's the easiest, you know, the path of least resistance is just turn right and shoot down Cooper, because once you take Cooper to Swan, and then once you're at Swan, you can go in practically any direction. It's just, I feel that is what's going to happen. It just seems that logic would dictate that that's the kind of thing that's going to happen. Cooper is going to be a transition street, period. We are going to be the buffer between the rest of the neighborhood and this apartment complex. We are going to have this parking lot business going on, whatever the sounds, you know, maybe we get lucky and there's not a lot of arguing or yelling, but there's going to be car door slamming. You know, we've got the looming buildings over us. This is all what's going on behind us. And then in the front, you know, we've got possible overflow parking. No, it's not going to be every day, but it's going to be, I would highly suspect overflow parking on any kind of game night, party night, you know, the social nights. And then we've also going to have cut through neighborhood traffic of people just looking for the path of least resistance or the easiest way out of there. People don't want to sit and wait. They'd rather be driving through a neighborhood street, even if in the end that they didn't get what they were going quicker, at least they had a better time doing it. So, you know, this is what all is going on. So, back to the zoning conditions. We feel like we need a lot more, really, as far as on Rosemont, keeping traffic from just turning right. And we are very grateful that yesterday in the meeting, Tom did, you know, agree to put some kind of a curved curbing or something there on Waypoint's lot that would, you know, none of that's going to prevent a right turn, but at least it does discourage it. And if they also put signage there that says no right turn, that could be helpful. So we would want to get that in writing. We need to have a chance to kind of work out those details. There's a couple of other things in our zoning conditions that are BCAP stuff that we really wish that he would address, and we did email him a letter Monday. We've got nothing in writing. A couple of the items were gone over in the meeting that we had, but there really wasn't enough time. So we just kind of need to, we just need a little bit more time to kind of deal with this stuff. We want to also have some input and find out from him a little bit more. Things like roof lines and materials. And I was listening to earlier comments where people were, I don't know, is it Sarah? I've forgotten her name. I'm so sorry. But the woman from Waypoint, where she's talked about the interiors, we don't have a clue about the exterior, and the roof lines, the materials, things like that are important to us. We'd like to know more about that. And then, we get into, there's just typical stuff in here about signage and non-reflective materials and lighting and things like that. We really would like to see 24-hour on-site management. The problem with, 9 to 5 management is they just don't really know what goes on. And I think that 24-hour management, if this apartment complex was situated somewhere in a better location, or what we think would be a better location, maybe you wouldn't need all these safety precautions, but it's not in a really ideal location because it is abutting a neighborhood actually on 2 sides. So there just has to be a greater level of, I feel that they need to meet a greater level of behavior and what they're willing to do. So I don't know, is there this wall business? It comes back a lot to the wall. We really need to talk more about it. The neighbors have a lot invested in their homes. We all do, and we kind of need things to we need our life to not completely fall apart when this building gets built. So if it's going to be approved, and I personally am against the rezoning, I'm not against, we have supported Fry's or Kroger or somebody. I mean, there's some different, it's going to be 24-hour emergency care. There's been different options that we have been supportive, but I think what we would really like to see is, as others have said, mixed use, home ownership, even if it's entry level, something like the Sam Hughes place did on 6th and Campbell, where they've got condos on top of retail, and the parking thing works out really well because it's shared parking, and something like that. And it's actual home ownership, because we feel like ownership, it's more stabilizing to the neighborhood. It's more, it certainly blends more in with the neighborhood, and that's kind of what we're hoping for. If this rezoning does go through, then we just feel like we need a little bit more protections than what have been offered so far, and we just kind of need a chance to try to iron that out, and just trying to get the best deal we can get, I guess. So that's it.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. Would anyone else in the audience like to be heard? Mr. Warren?
Yes, I'd like to address some of the points that were brought up, if I may.
Of course.
To be factual. First of all, how this site is designated. In reading the Broadway Craycroft area plan, you can pick different things out of different portions of it, and say this is applied, you can't have this height or whatever. And the same with the Plan Tucson. On page 9 in the Broadway Craycroft area plan, it talks about the high density on a site like this. And then it says, see page 11. And page 11 clearly marks this site as residential, office, or commercial. And then it also discusses, not page 11, on another page, about this site along Broadway going up to 95 feet. So I just want to say that, you know, it's designated, it's separate, and it's marked on the plan, you know, that was approved in 1986. Also, this type of site is very clearly within Plan Tucson, and it talks about this type of density. And I think that could be verified by Planning Development Services. So I just want to put out those 2 points. As far as the parking count, there are 240 bedrooms. There's 222, and then there's 36 2 bedrooms, but it comes to 240 bedrooms times 1.4 is 336 parking spots. And we're suggesting 339. It's been discussed that the buildings are 3.5 stories or 4 stories. The buildings are 3 stories, and they are, you know, we're identifying 40 feet. The actual plans 38 to 40, but we're identifying 40 feet. And it's like Sarah said, you know, we're trying to come up with 9 foot. They are trying to come up. I'm not part of the development, but they are trying to come up with 9-foot ceilings to have a quality space. And there are 2 43 to 45 pop outs, 2 pop outs on each building. So they're not 45-foot buildings. The previous, one of the previous that the neighbors have spoken about, and we all worked together, was a shopping center of 80,000 square feet. And the buildings were C1, they were 30 feet plus 4-foot parapet, and also units on top of the roofs. So it was very different. And also that relates to what Laura just spoke about as far as the height of the wall. You had stores, you know, like up to open to midnight, things like that. And so we were talking about a higher wall because of all the activity, the light, and also safety. But in the Broadway area plan, it specifies 6 feet. It's actually stated. So I just wanted to make sure that's, you know, so it's all accurate. There are very few 7-acre properties in these major corridors, vacant properties, especially near something like the Williams Center, or, you know, the 1.5 million square feet. And I'd like to bring everyone up to date on that. In the last 18 months, so that, you know, we have all the facts that are accurate. The Williams Center has leased 90,000 square feet. They are in negotiations right now of another 30,000 feet. And the old Texas Instruments building, which is vacant, is being sold to a user. That's another 125,000 square feet. So these are facts, they're not suppositions. And I just want to make that very clear and have it in the record. The alley is 16 feet. So the actual clearance from property lines where it's 75-foot setbacks is 91. And on the building to the east from the property line is 79 feet. It's 63 plus 16. So the alley is 16 feet. Transom windows, I think on the 3rd story, you know, I think that's fine. I think that they're back against the neighborhood. On the south, I think definitely, you know, I think we agreed that should be a zoning condition. And a matter of interest, Mr. You know, when you asked at the beginning, the site will be approximately 3 to 6 feet below what it is today, going from east to west. But that obviously I want to qualify that statement that this northern portion of the site won't be 3 to 6 feet below, you know.
But the grade will be the same as the neighborhood to the south, right? That's just it's like a lump there. when you drive out there, it just looks like somebody had some excess dirt and put it there.
Yeah, in 1945.
Maybe.
I know.
Maybe, you know, I've only been
Yeah.
here since 1980, so I don't know.
Yeah, I know, but no, but the site will be on the southern portion of the site is gonna be 3 to 6 feet below what it is. So one point, it'll be 6 feet, and another point, it'll only be 3 feet, and then it grades all the way down to Broadway and won't change. Will
Right.
not change.
Okay.
Okay. So let's see, zone, the actual plan, as I reiterated earlier, which specified the site, being available, for apartments or zone, or retail office, and the heights, were actually, were decided in 1986. It was not a last minute thing. And it's it. And also I agree with Teresa and others about the left turn signal and the traffic. And, I told them I campaign side by side with the city. We want to do it. At the end, the developer doesn't object to it. We can't, control the city, but I would do that. And I agree with them. And also, as Laura mentioned, totally agree with curbing directing the traffic, even with a left turn signal. I don't think anyone wants to cut through the neighborhood to begin with, but definitely want to deter any traffic going through the neighborhood. That's, definitely. So happy to answer any questions you might have.
I don't have any questions, substantive questions. The only question I have is, a couple of the speakers expressed the view that more time for dialogue would be useful, they believed. And let me just tell you, my view on that is, if people want to talk, that's fine by me. But that's, that's sort of separate from the hearing process. So I put it to you, Mr. Warner, do you want me to close the hearing and make my recommendation, or do you want to continue it for a period of time for more dialogue? Totally up to you.
I recommend that we close the hearing. We've started this back in January. We've had 3 meetings instead of 1, and a lot of dialogue. This last letter that came obviously later than the meeting that we had to cancel because of procedural problems. But I think that, we had a lot of dialogue. We all talked it all through, and we're abiding by both the Craycroft, Broadway Craycroft plan, and also by Plan Tucson. And we're doing what the site was designated to do, I think, in a responsible way. And I'm happy to see, I know there were some comments about the cost of the apartments, but these folks that leases that are going in, some of these folks, have fairly good incomes and be able to afford it. And I firmly believe with a quality project that'll be developed, it's also going to improve the value of the neighborhood homes. So I just don't, I think we've gone over and over these points again, and I don't think that we're asking for zoning, and I'm not sure it's I'm familiar. I'm on a design review board at the university, but this is a different situation. It's not a historic situation. It doesn't have all that type of criteria. I think we're abiding by all the codes and policies.
Okay. Thank you. I want to thank everyone for their participation. It's an important part of the process to hold a public hearing on rezonings. And Mr. Warren, I want to thank you and your team for your presentation. And I want to thank the folks in the neighborhood and in the area around for the time that they put into doing, the level of research and analysis. It's all very helpful and informative to me. So I want to wish everyone a safe and happy evening, and I'll close the public hearing. My preliminary report will be issued in 5 business days, so next Thursday. And then following that, I issue a final report 5 business days thereafter, the following Thursday. And as maybe I didn't say this at the beginning, I think Mr. Warren understands, but just to make it clear, I hold public hearings on behalf of the mayor and council. I make recommendations to the mayor and council when the matter comes forward before the mayor and council. If it does on the rezoning, that's obviously their decision, not mine. But I give it my best shot in any event. So hope everyone has a great evening and take care. Good
Thank
night.
you for your time.
Of course. Thank
Bet.
you.